Alrighty, guys, we have time for just a couple more of these marathon Let's Tries this month. And it's time to get to one of the ones that has been requested probably the most at this point that I haven't done yet. Minotaur Hotel is a set visual novel. Wow, it's freaking out down there. Visual novel containing nudity, adult themes, and sexually explicit content of homosexual nature between fictional characters. By proceeding, you confirm that you are over 18 years old or the applicable age in your jurisdiction. I'm sure you could read the rest. This is an adult game for adults. Settings? Not. Oop. Oh, there's a safe for work mode. Make my life easy, please. Thank you. Back. Oh, there it is again. Well, that makes my job a little easier. Across the sea you shall find the island of Crete, from which the tyrant Minos demanded tribute in the form of Athens' finest youth. Is it timing based or press button based? Oh. Upon arrival, they were sent to a foul location erected by Daedalus, the great architect. 'Twas a labyrinth in which lived the bull of Minos. The hybrid was conceived when the tyrant's wife, a once sacred nymph, was stricken by a lustful curse, making her take the bull's lurch. The result was the monster called Asterion, half bull, half man. Having no place in nature, he took to consuming human flesh. He lived in the labyrinth, fending off Athenians. But among the sacrifices came a distinguished hero, Theseus, future king. The bright-eyed Athenian captivated the passions of Princess Ariadne, who revealed the secrets to defeating the Minotaur. Later, the victorious prince's bronze sword shone splendidly under the sun, as he and the princess sailed away from Crete to Naxos. The deed. You don't remember much about that night. Your travels had taken you far from home. You were halfway dead after all the nights tossing and turning under unfamiliar ceilings. It was 3 a.m., and it felt as if you hadn't slept in a proper bed for at least 2 nights. You were pulling at the spirit you had left to keep you going, grinding your mind to dust. But it would soon be over. You were so close to home, just one more bus ride, one long enough for a good night's sleep. Until then, however, you had to keep yourself awake. You got up and set out to explore the station. The whole place was a sorry sight. It didn't have much, and what little it had was poorly maintained. The bathroom was an atrocious mess. The lobby's floor was stained with age. The asphalt on the terminals was cracking. Even so, it had been built to last, decorated with brutal obsidian pillars cut right out of the earth itself, and marble tiles polished into labyrinthine patterns. The walls were lined with statues in a grotesque style, their exaggerated expressions locked in wide-eyed screams. The ceiling was covered with latticed reproductions of paintings, Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, and a bit up ahead, Picasso's Guernica. The lobby seemed to extend forever onward, lined on either side by rows of closed-down stores. The elevator music playing from some unseen speaker was enough of a distraction to keep you going. A sudden cracking of static broke the song. You had found your way into a cafe, populated solely by an old radio and an even older gentleman. His skin was paper thin. He held a cup of coffee, and every time he sipped from it, his shaking hands would spill half the contents. The old man's glazed gaze passed over you a few dozen times before he realized you were there. As he looked at you, he patted the stool beside him and shook his hand in your direction. He poured a cup for you. You sit, hunched over the counter, and take a sip. A breeze of life pours over your face. You can't even register what it tastes like. You just know right then and there that you are alive and wide awake. You look to your side, to the old man. His face is contorted in some form of distress, lips quivering as his eyes dart to and fro. He puts a hand over each of his pockets, face still locked in fear, until his right hand falls over his breast pocket. He breathes a sigh of relief and looks at you. He starts talking, but not in a language you understand. He's not even looking at you. His gaze wanders around with seemingly no goal, but eventually he finds a thread you can follow. You seem like the traveler type. You remind me of... He hesitates, glances around, mulls over his words. Yes, you remind of myself in my younger days. He looks ahead and takes a sip of his drink. You catch a glimmer in his eyes, a sudden wakefulness. I was a fool. Never settled down and squandered my one chance at a proper life. Felt the road would always take me in. Ended up throwing away the one place I could call a home. It's been rotting for who knows how long. And now I'm old. Always wondered if someone would ever take over and treat it right. Now, you do remind me of myself, but I wasn't a good man. Hopefully you don't have the mean streak I had. Well, I'm figuring things out. Wouldn't say I'm the greatest person or anything, but I suppose I'm finding my way. Is that so? Suppose that's as good as it gets. At least nowadays, you can try. Back in my day, my father treated me like dirt, and no one batted an eye. I saw that happen a lot, too. I wasn't the only one. It made beasts out of my siblings and I, having a father like that. But don't you think I'm blaming him? You can only point the finger at your dad for so long, eh? At least eventually I found a way to make a living. How about you, young man? Have you found a calling? Blah! Hello. All at once. So I've heard this might not quite be a regular old visual novel. It might actually have its own, maybe more mechanically intensive and have its own things going on. Like it might be actually like a sort of a simulation running game when it comes to the titular Minotaur Hotel. But we'll see about that. Humanities leader, arts, tech, math, speedrunner. Humanities, you're better at crafting contracts and get additional options from them. You're also good at handling bureaucratic situations. Leader, you're charismatic and a good mediator in conflicts. You're able to make some choices that are fixed for other backgrounds. Arts, you have vast knowledge of literature, arts, and architecture. You can make renovations to the hotel that bring in additional guests. Tech. You are knowledgeable about computer systems and programming and engineering. You can lend additional help with R&D. Math. You are analytical and thorough. You have access to additional information that leads to better team management and optimization. Speedrunner. You get additional loot from exploration and may turn a danger event to your advantage. Good for a second playthrough. Well, out of these, I'd probably arts in real life. A man of culture, yes. Now that's very scarce these days. The old man rambles in the same language from before. Sometimes he'll stop and stare at you. As if expecting a response. A nod or a grunt is enough to get him to going again. His voice becomes graver and deeper as the night goes on. It is soothing, in a way, even if at times he'll again allude to having a rough, sorrowful past. Eventually he stops, and his gaze seems to shine with lucidity once more. I must say, I'm terribly sorry. I'm afraid I never asked for your name. Is there a default name? I'm glad I met you, period. That doesn't work. No. Glad I met you, Keel. I just spewed a thought until then it became real. The old man's eyes became glazed again, and his hand starts shaking. Coffee spills everywhere, but it's gone cold already. You seem like a well-traveled man. No. Oh. Traveling when I was young was so difficult. Now you can be on the other side of the globe in a day or two. Oh, how the world has changed. There was this one time I talked with my brother just about this topic. Back home there was this vineyard where we spent many summers eating and drinking. I remember it so well. It's like a moving picture. And you know what he told me? That when we were young there was so much wonder and magic around us. It's true. We could walk the road. A stony little thing from Roman times. And when we were children, once or twice a week, we'd see ghosts rising from the cairns and crosses to mingle about. But things have changed so much. I think it's the technology. Spirits in the arcane don't mix well with it. Or maybe it's something in the eyes. My brother, he used to say it's because mankind lacks piety nowadays. The unknown is not as frightful either. So much mystery has been lost. And so the bridge with the fantastical broke down. The old man freezes for a moment, then looks back to you. Ah, I was rambling again, was I? I'm so sorry. Don't worry about it, that's interesting to hear. Gotta watch out for the you. I've seen a number of seemingly unexplainable things. Anyone who travels as much as I did will stumble on too many to count, really. But I'm good at keeping my cool and paying attention. Too often these unexplainable phenomena are quite mundane in origin. I'm not saying there's people in costumes making hoaxes. Well, actually, yes, there are. Or making deep fakes and posting them online. But too often, there's a perfectly serviceable explanation elsewhere. You just have to pay attention and unravel the thread. Unraveling a thread, eh? No, that's quite sharp of you. Unravel the thread like the golden thread in the Minotaur's maze. I may believe in ghosts, I do, but I see the wisdom in your words. Don't let yourself be tricked. You really seem something special, I'd say. Perhaps you will do. Here. I'd like you to have this. I'm sure you'll take better care of it than I did. The old man takes an old piece of paper from his breast pocket and extends it to you. The deed for the place I told you about. The one I squandered. I'm old. Tired. I would like someone to have it. I've been looking for an heir for a while now. And I don't quite feel like I have any more time to waste. Just take it. It's yours. A grandiose place, the hotel. Time's taken a toll, but you'll love it. Just please, take good care of it. Be good. Give him a purpose. You raise an eyebrow at him. Did this old man try to give you a hotel just like that? Now who would do that? His wandering gaze betrays his senility. At times, he seems outright confused, as if he didn't know how he got here in the first place. You can't take it. It wouldn't be right to take advantage of someone like him. And that's assuming that piece of paper is a deed. It might just be a used napkin with a nice seal. The old man's gaze wanders around. With his hand still extended, he squints his eyes at you, then looks down to the paper. He struggles to put his thoughts together, but for a brief moment his expression grows firm and lucid. You must think I'm crazy, but please understand. This is my last chance to do it right. Just take the deed. You give in to the old man's pleas. You're just accepting a piece of paper after all. It's probably nothing. And if it is indeed something important, you can try returning it. You obtain the old deed. The old piece of parchment looks unimaginably ancient. Older than you, that's for sure. But the wax on it seems reasonably new, perhaps even fresh. You break open the seal and examine the paper's contents. It's gibberish, written in an alphabet you've never seen before. Well, it would seem like this was all for nothing. You stick the deed in your jacket's pocket. You look back up to the old man. The corners of his mouth wrinkle, and he shakes ever so slightly. But his joy is short-lived. His gaze wanders once again. When his focus returns to you, he furrows his brow, taking in each of your features one at a time. The old man mumbles something to himself, takes a sip of his coffee, and smiles. You are a very kind young man, Keel. He does remember your name, at least. You check your wristwatch, and the numbers have turned to gibberish. You take it you've spent too long here. You collect your luggage, say your farewell to the old man, and thank him for the wonderful coffee. He subtly bows to you. No, Keel. It is I who ought to be grateful. It was a pleasure dealing with you. My watch became gibberish? That tells me maybe I just started changing, because I'm ready for some very strange magic stuff to happen. So I'm thinking like, oh, did you just rewrite your language, and so you've lost track of how to read your watch now because you now understand completely different symbols. You leave the cafe and make your way to the bus terminal. The station is deserted, save for a single man smoking a cigarette outside the cafe. You greet him with a nod, and he responds in kind. Aside from the old man, he's the only person you find. But maybe that ought to be expected at this time of night. You make your way to the empty station. There's no one to greet you at the boarding platform. The bus is so dark, you can barely make out the driver's silhouette. As soon as you sit down and recline, you try to process the night's events, but your thoughts skitter away. It's so hard to say for sure exactly how long you've been traveling. All the airports, truck stops, train stations, and ports mixed together. The restlessness of an unending travel is the only constant. It doesn't take you long for it to give up. A merciful warmth seeps from your chest as you fall asleep. The hotel. It's just that easy. You go out for a drink, and whoops, now I own a furry hotel. If only it was that easy. A few days later. The horizon sprawls across the stained windshield. The radio's tune has disintegrated into static. The AC can't keep up with the sun's heat on the car's roof. The desert stretches on the entire horizon ahead, a wasteland of flat, yellowed plains. To the right, about 100 meters from the road, the dusty soil gives way to a sharp cliff. A valley peeks out beneath it, stretching to the blue horizon. You check the deed again. You couldn't read it at first. Maybe you were too tired, but now the once gibberish characters make some sense to your brain. It's like reading a language that has branched off from your native tongue a few centuries prior. It is just alien enough to be unrecognizable at first. However, when you squint hard enough, you find the characters remind you of your alphabet, and then the words' meanings pop into your mind. It's unsettling, in a way. It feels as if your brain is shifting from inside out, the more you look into it. But try as you might, it's hard to even acknowledge this discomfort. It melts away in the blink of an eye. You squint at the deed. Just an hour or so ago, you checked it and realized how close you were to the address. And so you got into your car and set out, with a newfound curiosity and a nagging anxiety fighting it out in your chest. Maybe the old man really had given you something of value after all, not a worthless scrap of paper. Could it really be? You got a deed for a hotel from a senile old man in a cafe. Sure, not many would complain about getting something for free like that, but at the same time, most would argue it feels wrong. The hotel should just be further ahead. You turn off the engine and set off again. It pops up on the horizon just 5 minutes later. A while later, you pull into its gravel parking lot. It's like looking back in time at what must have been one of the greater hotels of the 30s and 40s. It's built entirely out of marble in an Art Deco style. It's majestic, grandiose even, but utterly ruined by age and made eerie by its surroundings. Who thought building such an incredible place in a desert would be a good idea? You look to the infinite horizon behind you. There's nothing aside from the hotel. No plants of any kind, no cacti, brush, or even dead trees. Only a hotel, in the middle of the desert, built on top of the cliff's wall. No animals either. The sky is blue without a cloud or bird of prey in sight. The ground beneath you has no bugs, not even a scorpion or spider. There were no other cars on the road either. You look back to your car's panel. The odometer indicates that you've driven only about 4 miles. Your car's hood is cool to the touch, as if it's been off for hours. You look back to the hotel as you think about all those details. Something catches your eye, however. A porch overlooking the valley beneath the hotel. The valley stretches to the cloudless horizon, framed to the right and left by more cliffs. Looking down to the bottom, you can just make out the outline of a dry riverbed stretching out. You notice there's a cave opening in the cliff wall, right below the hotel. Its exit is lined with statues, and the details of which you can't make out at this distance. Right outside, there are rocky tiles spreading out in pathways. You'd wager a guess as it made for a labyrinth of sorts when the river still flowed. The maze ends with a single pathway leading to a high mound, which would have easily stood as an island in the middle of the flooded valley. The region's terrain is much like the hotel. It may have been beautiful a long time ago. Now it's eaten away by time. Your reflection is broken as more pressing matter sneaks up on you. The heat. Regardless of the weirdness around you, there's no escaping the sweltering sun. You walk to the entrance. The doors are unlocked. It's hard to tell for how long this place has been abandoned. The building itself surely is old. The exterior is severely decayed. It wouldn't be surprising if the interior is teeming with wild animals, rotten walls, and fallen pieces of ceiling. But instead it's just dusty, humid, and stagnant too. The walls are water damaged and there's a lot of mold. However, it's not as bad as one might think. You call out in the hopes that someone, anyone, might be there. Maybe some squatters, but just outside, Just like outside, there's no signs of life at all in the hotel. You walk up to the reception. The counter is as dusty as you'd expect, and there are pens and yellowed pieces of paper strewn about. It seems whoever was here left this place in a hurry. Who knows how many years ago. There's a door behind the reception desk, which leads you to a small but dignified office that seems to have been left under a similar state of hurry. There are even portraits on the table showing black and white pictures of a smiling family. On the corner of the room, there's a rusted safe. Let's check the safe. It's one of the old-timey safes you'd see in movies in the 90s with the spinning dial and all. You prepare yourself to try and crack the password. Except it's already unlocked, albeit rusty. I'm not emotionally prepared for the idea that safes that have a dial on them are old-timey. There's only a stash of booklets inside it. 4 passports, all from different countries. Unsurprisingly, they're all expired. There doesn't seem to be anything special about them. But it's strange that someone would keep passports in an office like this. When should you investigate? Oh, back to the desk. On the desk is a ledger. Like everything else in the hotel, its pages are yellowed and wrinkly, but it's still readable. It contains a list of guests, their respective rooms, check-in and check-out dates, signatures, and so on. The last guest arrived back in 1944. To be more precise, someone attempted to check in on that date but was interrupted in the process. All the following pages in the ledger are blank. You find a second leather-bound ledger as well. This one has staff written on it, in flaking gold paint. It lists all the employees in the hotel during 1944, their country of origin, role, and a few have stars scribbled beside their name. This place employed quite a number of people. More than 50, in fact. There doesn't seem to be anything else you can deduce from this ledger. You take a moment to go over the ledgers and passport together. A cursory glance reveals a pattern. The passports are from the 4 employees with the stars beside their names. You take them with you and leave the ledger on the table. You return to the reception to continue looking around. Up ahead is a tall spiral staircase going both up and down. There are multiple paths branching out from the lobby. You take one of the hallways leading down to the bedrooms and find all the doors unlocked. Much like the lobby, the bedroom's rotting walls were consumed by time. Walking into them disturbed the fine mist of stagnant spores and dust, which was turning into a curtain of diamonds by the sun shining through the windows. Each bedroom was equipped with at least one king-sized bed. The springs were busted, more often than not, and the fabric yellowed, but not even such desolation could hide the past glory of this place. You returned back to the hallway, which seemed to stretch forever forward. From outside the hotel looked big, but not nearly sprawling enough to have a ground floor with 100 bedrooms. No matter how many twists and turns you took, the hallways never wrapped back into itself. Backtracking all the way back to the lobby was the only option. The spiral staircase seemed much more inviting than wandering the seemingly endless hallways. Okay, well, now I just feel like we walked into House of Leaves, and I feel like we should flee. Over the staircase, all the way up, there was a skylight draping the sun's warmth over your shoulders. It was a lighthouse guiding travelers to this once majestic hotel. The way down was as ominous as the skylight was graceful. The marble handrails were lined with burnt-out lamps. It was impossible to see much in the darkness down below. The second floor was mostly bedrooms again, but here, The outer hallways were lined with sprawling windows showing a courtyard behind the hotel, close to the cliff's edge. Puppies! Is that a Cerberus? Multiple heads? I think so. So is that I think that makes that Hades? It was a sight to behold. While the hotel was consumed by time, the gardens outside had flourished. It was a field brimming with white flowers swaying in this wretched desert's wind. At the center was a statue of a man and a dog. The flowers rose up to the man's knees, and only the top of the dog's head could be seen. The man's hand was outstretched, as if beckoning the flowers to grow taller and for people to approach. The garden seemed a more inviting adventure. You descended back down the marble staircase, brimming with clarity, and it felt like a cloak or a hug was draped over your back. You took the hallway leading further towards the hotel's back, and a single turn to the right brought you to a vast room. Right beside its entrance was a bar, and to the left, tables, couches, and reclining chairs. Further left, there was a tall window of stained glass, like the ones in the cathedral. And through a glass door beside this window was the garden. The wind blowing through the garden set out a long, continuous whistle. From its low angle, the statue seemed like a king, tall, yet humble, beckoning his dear subjects. The flowers swayed back and forth in this singing wind, and the dog's head was barely visible above them. Its ears were perked up, and its tongue lolled out from its grinning mouth. Behind the statue, beyond the courtyard, was a railing overlooking the drop into the valley below. As you walked around the statue, you noticed that out the corner of your eye, that the dog seemed to have turned its head to follow you. Are they going to show that? You looked back. The statue hadn't budged, but indeed it was gazing right at you. You parted the flowers and walked up to it, and that's when you noticed the dog had 3 heads, one staring forward and one looking off to either side. All 3 of them exuded warmth. You petted one of its heads, and noticed how worn the marble was. People had been petting him for a very long time. Then, when you made your way to the cliff's edge, once more you were greeted by the valley. Straight down, far below, you could see the statue-lined cave exit. You could only wonder how vibrant this land must have been ages ago, when the valley's river still flowed. You go back inside, into the vast room. It seems dark but intimate, now that your eyesight is used to the exterior's brightness. You can still notice the whistling coming from outside. You take a seat at the bar. This newfound darkness is smooth, soft as velvet. It's like being in a candlelit lounge. Behind the counter, the bottles of fine spirits are still half filled. They glimmer in exquisite browns, reds, and blues. You close your eyes and imagine how this place was decades ago. The whistling shifts again. It turns into the hum of human life, footsteps and breathing, chairs being dragged, cutlery and plates clinking, laughter, whispers, people greeting each other from across different tables. People dressed so nicely. A barman in front of you, serving the finest drinks you can imagine. He knows your name and how you like it. Whether you're tired or brimming with life, he lends you an attentive ear. You open your eyes. You're back in the abandoned hotel, majestic and destroyed. One can understand why the old man wished to pass it on to someone who would care for it. You tap your jacket's breast pocket, making sure the crumpled parchment is still there. Even the yellowed, stained paper exudes warmth now. You stand up and walk out. As you do so, you notice a large purple stain on the floor behind the counter, and the glass shards of what used to be a wine bottle. You proceed further into the hotel. There's a lot to see still. All the way down the hallway, a set of sliding glass doors beckon you. But from afar, the difference is clear. The wallpaper is ripped, and one of the doors is cracked. You step on something hard. A revolver bullet. You push the door to the side and are greeted by an even more chaotic sight. It's the hotel's restaurant. The tables are overturned, and both chairs and plates lay broken on the floor. There's a darkened stain in the middle of the room which trails into the kitchen. This is getting grimmer. We have a weapon, we have dark stains that are undescribed. Oh, there's a sound. It leads you past the pantry to the massive iron door of a cold room, which is locked from outside and boarded up. All around the kitchen, things are strewn about. There's even a pan on the stove that, with what must have been fossilized food, and the sink is filled with dirty dishes. On a nearby counter is a revolver covered in thick dust, and you think back to the bullet in the hallway and the stain on the restaurant floor. The old man wasn't kidding when he said he wasn't a good person. You check your phone. Perhaps you'll need to call the police or a morgue, but there's no signal out here. You breathe in, preparing yourself for a terrible sight. The rusted door fights against your will but stands no chance. Darkness pours out. The stench strikes first. It's the stagnant smell of blood and rot. It clings to your nose and mouth like a bitter oil. Before your eyes can adjust to the darkness, a second wave of stench hits. It's like a farm, too. The scent of dusty fur, maybe even hay, but cooped up in a hot, humid room for decades. And last but not least, stale shit and piss. This place has it all, the stench of 1,000 different deaths. The light pouring into the cold room, shines on the floor in front of the doorway. Empty cans of soup and glasses of jam are strewn about over the trail of old blood. Whoever was locked in here didn't die quickly. The cold room extends into absolute darkness, a hallway in and of itself. You proceed, scraping your shoes on the floor so you don't trip over the refuse. The entire floor is covered with discarded glass and cans. Whatever scraps were left in them has long rotted, dried, and crumbled into dust. Both your footsteps and breathing echo. The overbearing humidity drapes across your back, and your breathing becomes agitated. The stench is stronger. Your sight finally adapts to the dark. At what must be the cold room's far wall, you notice the faintest glimmer. Hello. Just suddenly, there we go, there's the Minotaur. Whatever it is, it's slouched on the floor, motionless, as if it died where it stood, after who knows how long locked here. A shy blue glimmer, however, flickers where its left eye ought to be. Well, we gotta take a look. Your eyesight's used to the dark now. The distant pillar of light bleeding from the doorway is enough to avoid tripping on the discarded glass. You crouch in front of the thing. It has a bull's head. You look around its neck, searching for a zipper or the edge of a mask, but there's none. It's covered in fur, aside from the patches of sickly exposed skin. It has hooves instead of feet. Its horns could easily gore a person. Half of its skull is exposed. The bone still has a smattering of blood dust near the remaining flesh. Its left eye socket is empty, but something shines inside it, a blue ember. The fur is coarse and unkempt, but can't hide how deathly thin the creature was. It died from starvation, not from whatever destroyed its face. That's enough. You stand up and turn back to leave. As you do so, your rustling clothes and echoing footsteps break the curtain of silence. That's when you hear it. Breathing, as faint as a moth's wings flapping. You look back at the corpse. The blue flame flickers at you. Its chest expands and contracts. You take a step forward and the spark follows you like an eye. You set your gaze on the thing, trying to read its torn-off face. Can you understand me? It barely reacts to your voice at first. Your words slink to it and crawl into its head, dig their way into its mind, and then twist until it wakes up. Like a butterfly coming out of its long sleep, the thing's remaining eye shifts back to life. It nods to you. Well, that's worse. I don't want to be alive with half your face. What are you? I am the hotel's keeper and prisoner of the labyrinth. His voice is raspy, nearly a string of grunts booming through the room in contrast with his disheveled body. His remaining eye frowns. And you're the master now, which makes me your servant. Bound to your will, I cannot disobey your orders. The thing cradles his head between his arms. His voice comes out muffled. If you wish to know what thing am I am a hybrid monster. About my sorry state, the previous master did this to me. And as your servant, I shall answer the master's questions. He remains, with his face hidden for a while longer. When he does look up, he stares at the exit and not at you. He squints his eye and raises a deathly thin forearm over it. He scuttles an inch to the side, so your shadow covers him. Why did the previous master do this to you? The creature recoils, shrinking further into a fetal position. Being a monster is reason enough for damnation, master. He chose to return the labyrinth to its original purpose, I presume. His bony jaw opens and closes, chewing on nothing. Does one need a reason to follow the will of the gods? It hardly matters, regardless. I cannot die. His open wounds stand out as he speaks. Alongside his madly flickering flame. They are glaring enough to be visible from afar, even in the distance, in the darkness. How can I help you with your injuries? He exhales sharply at your words. His face sinks again between his legs. Master need not worry about me. I cannot die, and it stopped hurting a long time ago. A skull feels no pain. What truly hurts is thinking about our guests. For all this time, I've wondered what happened to them. I hope they found belonging elsewhere. Why were you locked here? That is what the last master saw fit. He shot me, then commanded that I stay here, in this room. But as you can see, I am undying. It only hurts. I cannot be killed. I can only presume he expelled all the guests shortly after, and now the hotel must be in as sorry a state as I am. He locked the door as well, but his command was enough. I cannot disobey, so I had no way out. I am a prisoner, after all. You were a prisoner, but you were also the hotel's keeper? His eye narrows and ear droops. Yes, I was sentenced by the gods to spend eternity here. I did not fight my killer, and for my meekness, I was condemned. The gods made this land, which they called the Labyrinth, to house me in my damnation. The master is meant to be my torturer, and to that end is given control over the land. But there was a master who believed the labyrinth could turn into a soothing place, and that I could tend to it. So by his will I became the keeper. And by the gods' ancient command, the labyrinth attracts those who are lost and have nowhere to go. They become our treasured guests. He closes his eyes for a moment, lost in a daydream. What about your life before you came here? What was it like? Master Jean-Marie told me it became a matter of legends. I was born from a queen who had an illicit affair with the white bull of the sea god Poseidon. I was raised in the court of King Minos in Crete. He took me as his son, even if I was much worse than a bastard. But eventually, my sister demanded I be sent away. Father Minos acquiesced. Mother spoke not. So they shipped me off to my first labyrinth, alone, with just an axe for company. I stayed there for years. Until one day, the warrior Theseus came for my head in rebellion against Father's reign. He was prepared to fight me, but I had nothing to live for. So instead, he provided me with mercy. As you can see, the previous owner attempted the very same, but I cannot die. Not this time. I only lost some flesh. And the hotel's guests. His eyes flicker madly. Who lived here? Just about anyone in need. If fate saw it fit for them to stumble here. Orphans and runaway children. Homeless wanderers chased by their pasts. Shell-shocked men seeking respite. Those who have no one else and no place to call home. Before the last master took over, the hotel belonged to a man who fought in the First Great War. Master Jean-Marie. He saw fit to bring in those displaced by bloodshed. His voice falters for a moment, and you hear a little cracking. The hotel was glorious then. Master Jean-Marie survived the First War, but not the Second. So his brother inherited the hotel, and saw fit to enact his will against me. You pull the hotel's deed from your breast pocket. So this makes me the new master? Correct. The ownership of the labyrinth was transferred to you. I always know who the current master is, and his name. You asked all your questions. Another comes to mind now. What's your name? He hesitates before answering. His burning eye shifts ever so lightly. My master holds the right to pick my name. But if it is your wish to know, the one I was given at birth is Asterion. Asterion the Minotaur, adopted son to King Minos of Crete. Asterion looks up to you as he speaks. Perhaps in the distant past, those words, adopted son to King Minos of Crete, brimmed with pride. But today they drip with nostalgia and hope of a man who, for the first time in decades, utters his own name. For a split second, his remaining eye reflects a strand of light from outside. He realizes then how tired, thirsty, and hungry he is. But it doesn't matter. After all, he cannot die. As a servant, his duty takes precedence. The Minotaur readjusts to a kneeling position. The cracking of his kneecaps bounces off the cold room's walls. He bows his head to you. The bond between jailer and prisoner is born from the deed, while that between master and servant is willfully chosen. Will master hear my oath of service? You raise an eyebrow at the skeletal Minotaur's gesture. You cannot muster a response. In your silence, the Minotaur glances up to you. He starts shaking, barely able to hold his hands together. His lips tremble in anticipation. Master, the labyrinth was designed to torture me. The Minotaur's voice cracks. For the first time, you notice a tail thrashing behind him. The oath of servitude is what keeps it at bay. Please, Master, allow me to recite it and take me into your service. You can only nod in response. With your authorization, he's able to proceed, after a minute, to bring himself together again. By the provisions under the statute of Joseph the Merciful, the prisoner Asterion pledges loyalty and servitude to the labyrinth's master. The prisoner is made keeper of the hotel above the valley, and is bequeathed the power to realize the master's will. The master, in turn, binds the labyrinth, forbidding its malicious entities from leaving said valley. The realm was engineered to torture the prisoner, and indeed its mission shall be accomplished. The prisoner will carry the burden of servitude, but shall not suffer the labyrinth's wrath within the hotel's territory. The prisoner, shielded by his master's will, is made safe as long as his duty is fulfilled under the terms of the statute. Asterion dares not look up at you. Once he finishes his oath, his silence is broken only by the drops of sweat dripping from his trembling face. This is a lot of information to take in at once. If you want anything from me, you'll have to explain things a little better. For starters, gods? Are you telling me gods are real? Yes. Pardon me. I failed to consider the times. The gods. They are, or perhaps were, quite real. I cannot know for sure the specifics, but they seem to have disappeared. Back in my day, they were quite present among the lives of men, and more often than not, mortals were worse off for it. I don't know how long I've been here, nor what changed since then, but from the stories I heard, it seemed that most traces of the supernatural had vanished from the world of the living. Does that answer Master's question? Not completely. What were gods like? It was rare for mortals to know them personally, but the consequences of infuriating them were plain to see. The pantheon was respected, but above all, feared. They were not merciful. As you can see for yourself, they sentenced me here. This is a lot to take in, if I'm being honest. That Greek gods are real, or at least were, is kind of life-changing. Are all their gods real too? all others? I don't know. I believe many of them were, yes, but I cannot know for sure, as I do regarding the gods from my time. Were there other Minotaurs? No. I was the only one. Never saw or heard of another Minotaur in all those centuries. There are other supernatural beings. A few have appeared at the hotel, here and there. Some are staff members even. But they've grown so very rare, as of the last few centuries. But no Minotaurs. Why haven't I seen them elsewhere then? Do they live in the woods, isolated from civilization? Back before I got locked here, they used disguises. They passed as regular humans by using a charm. But I wouldn't know if that is still what they do today. And this oath you were talking about, what does it mean? It's what protects me, my lord. There are creatures in the valley. They cannot harm me inside the hotel as long as I am under the master's service. The previous oath remained for as long as the hotel remained without a master. With your arrival, I am made vulnerable again. Please, allow me into your service. Will Master Keel take Asterion as his servant under the terms of the statute? Very well. Assuming you are speaking the truth, yes. I accept you as my servant. Your words bounce off the walls and slither their way out of the cold room. The light, dripping from the door behind you, falters. Your shadow, draped over the Minotaur, flickers and shifts slightly. The world itself shudders under your words and responds by slithering into a new shape around you. Asterion still looks down, his frame now slouched further forward and no longer shaking. My gratefulness knows no bounds. I shall not disappoint. I may be in a sorry state now, but I'll be quick to recuperate. If Master so allows, I will take my leave. I need only take a trip to the infirmary to patch myself up. He raises his head ever so slightly, glancing at the doorway. I am still unable to leave the room until you command me otherwise. Undying as he may be, the Minotaur's body is atrophied. He won't go far on his own. You kneel down to his level. Despite the darkness, you can make out his scapulae and sagging skin. Can you walk on your own? Asterion averts his eye by looking down to his legs. Master ought not worry about me. I can make it to the infirmary on my own. I've been through worse. He won't look up at you. There's just a hint of pride in his voice. I'm sorry, I can't allow that. You're in no condition to walk anywhere. You'll let me take you there. That's an order. He remains with his head bowed, looking at his kneecaps. He sighs deeply, shoulders slouching at the same time. When he speaks, he pronounces every syllable with cold sharpness. I obey. The Minotaur's skin and fur is deathly thin. He shouldn't be heavy. You could carry him, but that alone could hurt him. Can I find a wheelchair around here somewhere? The infirmary ought to have one. It's one of the rooms further down the corridor. You tell the Minotaur to wait there while you fetch it. Right as you're leaving the destroyed restaurant, your vision falters. For a fraction of a second, the world goes black. The infirmary turns out to be the door immediately after the restaurant. You find a rusty and slightly moldy wheelchair thrown in front of the door. It'll do. Asterion waits where you left him, though now he's back to curling up, his face covered by his arms. His single remaining ear flicks as you approach, but he says nothing, either in gratitude or protest. He's light as a child, certainly no more than 20 kilograms. He grunts and shudders under your contact. After helping him to the chair, you notice one of your hands is covered in dark red blood from touching his back. As you make your way out of the cold room, you see his back is covered in horrific bed sores. With a sideways glance, he catches you staring. The light, however, seems to hurt him. He covers his eye with both hands. The infirmary is like looking into a period piece about the Second World War, with an added layer of dust and rust. Much like the kitchen, it was evacuated in a hurry. There were clipboards strewn about, medication vials left half open, even a hypodermic needle still loaded with a sickly yellow liquid. Squinting his eye, Asterion walks up to the drawers. He examines each one, silent, until one of them reveals shards of green glass and purple dried-out stain, and a purple dried-out stain. The Minotaur slouches forward and sighs. He scrapes a finger on the drawer, trying to gather some of the purple dust, but it's no use. He continues looking around, and you do the same. All you find are dusty bandages, long rotted medications, and, deep in one of the drawers, a nearly empty bottle of wine. You hold it up against the window. There's just an inch of wine left. The cork is dried out and crumbling into dust. In this heat, it must have turned to vinegar already. You're about to put it back when you notice Asterion's gaze following the bottle. He looks up briefly to your eyes, his face contorted into a pleading frown. Is this what you're looking for? The Minotaur nods meekly. The wine heals me. He does not budge until you extend it to him. Only then does he bow. The Minotaur sits on one of the infirmary's beds. The cork crumbles to dust when he pulls it, leaving the bottle still clogged. You extend a hand to him. He switches from looking at his bottle, held close against his chest, to your hand. Begrudgingly, he returns it to you. There's just enough cork left for you to pull it out. You return the bottle to the Minotaur. His hands shake as he tries to pour a few drops of the wine into the palm of his hand. He places the bottle on the nightstand. The Minotaur dabs his finger into the wine, leaving a single drop nearly falling from it, and touches one of his wounds. He repeats the process again and again. A few drops fall on the bed. His face frowns bitterly. When his handful of wine is nearly gone, he rubs his still wet hand on the exposed skull. It's only been a few minutes, but you can already notice some of his wounds healing. The Minotaur notices you watching. His lips, or what remains of them, curl into a proud half-smile. Yes, I can heal quite quickly, provided I have the wine for it. It is just a pity the full bottle I had stashed was broken. Asterion reaches a hand to his back. He flinches as he grazes one of the bed sores. Let me help you with that. You can't see it. He droops his ears in defeat. knowing full well you are right. However, he extends the bottle back to you with the speed betraying his eagerness. His tail flicks to and fro from behind him. You dab a piece of old gauze with the wine and get to work. The Minotaur's wounds have a black tinge to them. A dark oil seems to have accumulated on them, oozing down his back in clearly defined rivers. He flinches when the fabric touches his damaged skin, but pushes back against you at the same time. His wounds close quickly, in an almost unsettling speed. 5 minutes later, you've run out of wine, but it was enough to rid Asterion of his most egregious bed sores. He lays a hand on his skull. I'll need a lot of more wine for this. You ask if there's any other way you can help him. Asterion has a shy curve on his lips when he looks up to you from the bed. His tail flicks to the left, to the right. He swings his hooves over the floor. When he speaks, his voice is grave, however, and rumbles with sobriety. You've been too kind already, Master. It would be terribly unfitting for a keeper to impose a task upon his master, let alone as many as you've aided me with so far. His one remaining eye is half closed. Please, don't worry about me. He speaks then with a twinge of relief. Unless Master has a task for me, I shall take some rest here and then wash myself. I am most unfitting now for a keeper of the hotel. Master need not worry. Shouldn't you have some food first? What if you pass out in the bathroom? That shall not be an issue. I can obtain sustenance now that you've accepted me into your service. The Master commands the labyrinth, and through the oath you have bequeathed me some of your power. I shall not go hungry again. There is much I can gladly teach you about the labyrinth, Master. It shall tend to your needs, if you know how to lead it. Observe. For half a second, it's as if the entire world blinks out around you, and your mind goes blank alongside it. Now Asterion has in his hands an overflowing bunch of grapes. Do you like grapes? I hope these are to your liking. You hesitate before accepting food from him. Shouldn't he be the one eating first? The Master eats first. Only then may the keeper feed. Regardless, Master has been kind to me and I would be happy to share with thee. The Minotaur seems eager to have you taste the grapes. They are impossibly sweet, but you only take a few so he may start eating. He flicks his ear and tail at your enjoyment, then starts wolfing down the grapes. He barely looks up to you now. As soon as he's run out of grapes, a new bunch appears in his hands, then a cup of water, and more fruit still. When he finally does look up at you, he slows down and tries to clean his muzzle of all the juicy bits. His eye betrays a tinge of self-consciousness. I am sorry. I am more a beast than I am a man. Sometimes it gets the better of me. I should not be so brutish around Master. He almost seems to shrink down in front of you, trying to hide away. There is a shame painted clearly on his face over having required so much of your assistance. Perhaps this would be a good moment to let the Minotaur have some privacy. I'll let you have your rest. I'll come back to check on you later. Asterion interrupts his feeding frenzy to bow to you, dignified despite the juices running down his mouth and chest. I shall be presentable after washing up, Master. Worry not about me. Very well. If you do need help, just yell, alright? I don't want you getting hurt, even if you can't die, as you say. Asterion takes a good look at you. His dark eye glimmers softly under the infirmary's light. There's almost a wetness to them. He breathes so slowly as he gazes at you, tail flickering to and fro. He takes in every feature of your face, one at a time. Thank you for releasing me, Master. His eye betrays his drowsiness. He bows to you, and in doing so, nearly falls asleep. You tell him to get his rest. I will. You let him have his privacy. Chapter 2, Drink Your Sorrows Away. We're kind of longer in than I'm used to, but I'm kind of like... I was kind of like trying to reach the point where the main game starts, because I think the game might be a bit more systems driven. I mean, we even had like a class choice of sorts, but you know, visual novels and their intros are long enough that we're unlikely to make it that far exactly. So I think I might call it here, but this has been Minotaur Hotel, and if you want to check out where exactly this is going, and how you get from this very grim introduction to the art actually shown in the preview images, then you're more than welcome to check it out for yourself. I'll see you guys next time.